Hello, YouTube. Alright. Where do we go on from here? Without much further ado, I introduce myself. I am PsychoYajko on WYPS YT for YouTube. It is May 30th of 2025. 22 years have officially passed since Finding Nemo had made its initial release back in 2003. This movie. Yep. Finding Nemo. Good movie. What could go wrong with a good movie like Finding Nemo, right? This movie was directed by Andrew Stanton, one of the people from Pixar. A really good movie. I just watched it with my grandmother earlier today. No bones about it. A great film. Pixar could not have made a movie much better in that year than this one, right? Bright, colorful aesthetics, a good soundtrack, good dialogue. Hang on a moment. I gotta see, is it streaming right? Yeah, it is streaming. Okay, well there you go. Great movie. Bright, colorful aesthetics, a good soundtrack, good dialogue, and good characters with a big heart. With Marlin, the main character who goes for miles and miles to find his son who was taken by a dentist and placed inside of a fish tank, to then be handed over to his niece named Darla, who has a penchant for being cruel towards marine animals. Now, from my understanding, the guy who was mainly responsible, like I said, Andrew Stanton, and John Lasseter was behind the production too for Pixar in general, and the others. Stars in this movie include Ellen, who unfortunately has faded into irrelevance. She was known for doing the voice of Dory, a fish with short-term memory loss, who befriends Marlin along the way and helps him find Nemo. Then you have Stephen Root, who had a smaller role in this movie. He did the voice of Bubbles, a yellow-colored fish who's really heavily obsessed with bubbles, hence the name, Bubbles. Other productions with Stephen Root include King of the Hill. He did the voice of Bill Dauterive in that said cartoon series, which was created by Mike Judge. Stephen Root also played Milton in Office Space, the shy guy with glasses and a love for his red stapler that his jerk of a boss took away from him and placed him down inside of the basement and had his stapler confiscated from him. Yep, that's Stephen Root. He was in Office Space, which was also directed by Mike Judge. And then you have William Dafoe, who voices Gil, the one fish in that tank who guides Nemo and helps him. But the story starts off with Marlin, okay? Marlin the fish, the main character. Now, they are both excited about the fact that they are about to have over 400 fish. Coral wants the fish named to be Nemo, while Marlin wants half to be named Marlin Jr. or Coral Jr., which seems effortless to me to have each individual kid have the same name, but I'm not a parent, so what do I know? Now, I'm not going to go on a tangent about the whole movie, just some of the side gags I've noticed, or maybe some of the quotes in particular, that sort of thing. I might even talk about some of the scenes or events in that movie, but not each and every single detail that goes on in this movie. Alright? But yeah, Finding Nemo is a good movie, and the side gags that I'm not too familiar with when regarding the movie, one of the things I noticed in that movie was the scene where Nemo was inside the fish tank with the other fish. He looks around at his new environment and he sees a chest full of toys, most notably the Buzz Lightyear toy from Toy Story, another Pixar animation film. I want to check to see how many comments I have in my live stream right quick. How many people are joining my stream? Yeah, she was the one that had just keep swimming. Yeah, right. Yeah, that Dory. Yeah, see, AC Walker gets it. Yep, he knows what I'm talking about. And then we have the shark characters that I should mention. They all hide out and set inside of a deserted and derelict submarine surrounded by underwater detonators that could go kaboom when you come to close contact with them. As what Bruce said to them, those balloons could be a bit dodgy. You wouldn't want one of them to pop. Yeah, for sure as hell, you wouldn't. Nope, not at all. Now, when fish are friends. Now, my recollection of those sharks is that they're misunderstood. They go by their catchphrase, fish are friends, not food. That's their MO, which means modus operandi, which means mode of operation in Latin. But that covers that part. They basically have their, what you could call their rehabilitation for sharks who want to conform to fish society and their end goal is to have these meetings to mention the last time that they've eaten a fish, and they work to curb their urge to eat fish. Funny enough that DreamWorks took this idea and used it in their production of Shark Tale, which I'm not sure if they took that idea and used it in Shark Tale, but Shark Tale has kind of a similar premise, with one of the characters, with one of the sharks being named Lenny, who was voiced by Jack Black, and he's a vegetarian for a shark. He doesn't eat animals and everything. And that movie came out about a year after Finding Nemo. But that's a different topic when discussing that year's supply of sewage inside of a septic tank. And there's that part. And then you have the part in the movie when the two, Marlin and Dory, venture into the deep sea to find the mask that the diver had lost because it has the address of the dentist's office where Nemo was taken to, P. Sherman 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney, which is in New South Wales, one of Australia's 6 provinces that make up the country. Yeah, like I said, there's Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, South Australia, North Australian Territory, and West Australia. That's all 6 of them. And I should have mentioned this earlier. You find out earlier on in the movie that Nemo has a wonky fin that is a little bit limp, like a patient with Parkinson's or whatever. It shakes a little bit, and Marlin calls it his lucky fin. Maybe it's supposed to help him build confidence. That of which I'm inclined to believe. Now, Gil, who Nemo befriends, also has a similar thing against him. Like, Nemo has a bad fin, and so does Gil, that one fish. From my understanding, I think he got it after the first few attempts he tried to get out of that fish tank. And I think that the dentist's dental equipment was what caused him to damage his fin. I think that was mentioned in the movie at one point when they're talking about how Marlin is scared of the ocean and how Marlin is not coming to look for him or whatever, because that was one of Nemo's fears at some point in that movie. It's also worth mentioning that Marlin has his wife, Coral, and all the fish eggs that were eaten by a barracuda in the first half of the movie. Like before the opening credits, the captions. Marlin tries to take on the barracuda, but the barracuda knocks Marlin out cold. He's too late. The barracuda ate the fish eggs, and the barracuda ate Coral, his wife, and that was how Marlin became a widower. He's heartbroken, and on the ocean floor he finds a fish egg that was not eaten, and then he decides to name this one fish Nemo, as what Coral had originally wanted. Now, before Nemo was taken by the divers, you get a glimpse of Marlin's overprotective behavior, which stems from the trauma of losing his wife and his future children, which you remember from the earlier half of the movie. Hey, how are you, Shari and Allegiance? I'm sorry I didn't see you earlier. Thank you for coming in this stream. I hope you share some of the memories you have about Finding Nemo. A great thing to talk about since it's the 22nd anniversary, right? Yeah. Now, it's details like this. The trauma of losing his wife, Coral, and the children is what leads him to be very overprotective of Nemo. It's details like this that make the movie progress in an important way. It takes something such as conflict, which is important to move a story forward. You have internal conflict, and you have external conflict. Internal conflict would be Marlin's past trauma of losing Coral, as well as the other fish, and how that overshadows his extreme protective behavior. In one case, Nemo is with his friends. His 3 classmates swim out to an open body of water with a giant boat that can be seen in the distance. Nemo tells them how his dad constantly has to remind him how the ocean is not safe. Marlin, under the pretense that he was about to swim out into the open water there, like his friends, gets into a quarrel, and the argument ends with Nemo telling his dad, his biological dad, mind you, the one whose gene pool, that they both swim in, the same gene pool. Yeah, I'm sure you see what I did there. Swimming in a gene pool. But Nemo tells Marlin that he hates him. Woo! Lordy, Lord, Lord. Imagine that. Nemo telling Marlin that he hates him. Gosh. God dang, mate. Talk about someone who needs his ham smacked flat to a pancake that'll put the fear of God in him. Right? And there's some other characters to talk about here. Some side characters like Peach, the starfish, Bubbles, the yellow fish, who likes bubbles, like what I mentioned earlier, Deb and Flo, which is Deb, that's the fish, and her sister, Flo, her sister, whose reflection that she can see through the fish's tank glass, who she talks to at the time. And you have Gurgle. He's one of the fishes who has a phobia of bacteria and unsanitary conditions. So much so that when he asks Nemo where he's from, he says the ocean, and he flips and he bounces off the walls while asking Jacques, the shrimp, to give him a quick cleaning. He has not been decontaminated yet! Jacques, clean him! And I'd also like to mention that Joe Ranft, who did the voice of Jacques, died in 2006. Yep. Jacques. Jacques was voiced by Joe Ranft. It's been mentioned before in the end credits to the movie Cars. He voiced Fred, the fire truck, in that same movie. It's even worth noting that Joe did the voice of Heimlich, the caterpillar in Bug's Life, and Wheezy the penguin in Toy Story 2. The traffic collision was what caused him to die, and March 13th is his birthday. If he were still alive, he would have been 65 years old right now. Now, I'm going to be taking this moment to remember Joe Ranft, because he's a good actor, a good voice actor, from my understanding. Hearing his voice in some of the movies that I've seen in the past, like I've already mentioned, Bug's Life and Toy Story 2. And he was also in the original Toy Story 2, in the original Toy Story. He did the voice of the walking pair of binoculars. That was also Joe Ranft. Yeah. I'm going to be taking this time here to commemorate him. His birthday was around March 13th. If he were still alive, he would have been 65 years old right now. God bless Joe Ranft. Such a shame he had to die the way he did. Definitely very sad. Well, yeah, there covers that part. Now back to some of the side characters. There's Bloat, the pufferfish, and Gil. I think there's like 2 Gils in that movie. I think there was one near the drop-off, like one of the dad of one of the fish is one of the fish that goes to school with Nemo. There's Bob, Ted, and Gil. Bob is a squid. Ted is a seahorse, and Gil is a fish with a pointy nose. Yeah, I think there's 2 fish. I think there's 2 Gils in that movie. Yeah, the one in the fish tank and the one who Marlin comes across. Now let's go on to some of the pop culture references and mentions that were in this movie. In a chase scene in this movie, there's a scene where Bruce, he chases Marlin and Dory. Because the smell of Dory's blood, which was what caused him to go off the walls, he breaks through one of the doors of the submarine where a chasm appears, and you can partially see his face, and then he goes on to say, "Here's Brucey," which is a reference to Nicholson's catchphrase of "Here's Johnny" in Stephen King's The Shining. A pop culture reference to mention. And there's another scene where Marlin slaps his back fin on the whale's tongue, and then he's like, "How do I taste, Moby? Huh? Do I taste good?" Which is a reference to the novel Moby Dick by Herman Melville. Very poor choice of words, Captain Ahab. You forgot your harpoon gun there. Yeah. And there's some dialogue that I want to point out. The part where Marlin and Dory are talking about how the water in the whale's mouth is draining out, Marlin says that it's half empty, when Dory says it's half full. Life lesson for people. If you can't change something, change how you think about it. It's not that hard to do. Marlin is displaying pessimism by using the word half empty, and Dory is displaying optimism by using the word half full. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I call juxtaposition. And I will also go on to mention that the movie does have a good ending. No need to make spoilers. I'm sure a lot of people have seen Finding Nemo at some point in their life. Yeah, a lot of people have. Now, the movie did not end entirely in a good way. Not per se, but some feel good enough endings. The sad part was when Marlin became a widower, but at the same time he reunites with his son in the end. He finds Nemo. That's good. The other fish escape the tank in the dentist's office, with the fish tank covered in algae. The dentist takes the fish, puts them in bags of water, and then the fish roll out the window, across the streets, and into the water at the harbor. They escape, and their only trouble left is that they have not managed to break free from the bags that the dentist put them in. So they're still not totally free yet. Especially when assuming that the dentist could just find them at the harbor soon, and then just take them back like it was just a Wednesday. And that part is covered. Now the music in this movie was what was composed by Thomas Newman. Thomas Newman has done soundtracks for other movies. I believe he did the soundtrack for American Beauty, which came out like in 2000, I believe. He did the soundtrack for WALL-E, which came out in 2008. And he did the soundtrack for Lemony Snicket's, A Series of Unfortunate Events. The movie, A Series of Unfortunate Events. I'm not talking about the series, the Netflix series, the one with Neil Patrick Harris in it. I'm talking about the original movie, The Series of Unfortunate Events, with Jim Carrey, who plays Count Olaf in that movie. Yeah. Now, Neil Patrick Harris did the voice. He played Count Olaf in the Netflix series, but not in the movie like Jim Carrey did. Oh, and I also like to point out, Thomas Newman did the soundtrack for Disney Pixar's Elemental movie. From my understanding, that movie did receive flack, but it was alright. Not great, but good. Now let's talk about some random stuff with this movie, some crazy conspiracies. What if Darla, the snotty little brat with ponytails and the braces in her teeth, and Sid are long-lost cousins? Hence the brown hair, the braces in the teeth, their sick passion for inflicting pain on toys or fish. I'd say this is no coincidence. And then here's the part where we talk about the overall budgeting that came with this movie and the box office, which is essentially how much the movie made when talking about it. I'm trying to find out how I get the, I'm trying to find out how I can show you guys the budgeting. Okay, this is the part where I show you guys the budgeting. Now, according to this budgeting and box office opening weekend, Finding Nemo made $94 million based on production. $94 million was how much they spent, and $380 million was how much they made based on how many tickets they sold. And the Finding Nemo movie managed to sell as much and make $936 million worldwide. That was how many, based on how many tickets were sold across the globe when Finding Nemo first came out. But that was nothing compared to the production of Finding Dory, as which you can see here. Finding Dory was produced, $200 million was spent on making the movie Finding Dory. $486 million was how much Dory made based on domestic box office. And according to the worldwide box office, $1 billion was made for Finding Dory. Now, those are whopping fine numbers. You can't deny that. Definitely no bones about that. Good numbers. Really goes to show how much of a box office success that Finding Nemo was. And of course, the sequel, Finding Dory. But mostly Finding Nemo, which is what I've been talking about here. Yeah. Think about that. Yeah, I know. How much money can you use, or how much money can you make with that kind of amount? Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, dog, and they also got their reference later in Boondocks when Stinkmeaner walked into Robert Freeman's house. I don't think I'm familiar with that part in Boondocks. I definitely might have seen an episode of that show once or twice, but I don't remember Boondocks enough to remember that scene you're talking about. Other than that, I really don't know what to talk about. I really don't think there's other things to talk about, much about the fact, oh, you know what? How about we talk about some other things relating to Pixar, so that way I can extend this live stream. So I have other things to talk about other than just the fact that, oh yeah, good movie, Finding Nemo, yada yada yada. Let's talk about other things relating to Pixar. Okay. Pixar's very first theatrical release of a movie was 1995 movie Toy Story, with Tom Hanks doing the lead role as Woody. Tom Hanks' other movies include the movie Big, which came out in the 80s. I saw that movie with my grandmother. It's about a teen who wants to be all grown up or whatever. He becomes an adult and he works for some toy company. That was a really good movie with Tom Hanks. I have not seen Forrest Gump from Tom Hanks yet, but another movie with Tom Hanks is The Polar Express, which I talked about in that movie review when it comes to a Christmas movie, when it comes to that Christmas movie in particular. But yeah, there was Toy Story, and right before Toy Story was close to being complete, the producers at Pixar were already jotting up and doodling and coming up with a few ideas to come up with their next production, which eventually would become Bug's Life. Bug's Life is another film from Pixar, another movie that I like, that I've seen as a kid. I love that movie too. Definitely like Bug's Life. And one of the voice actors in that movie is the guy who's now, I think, been convicted for sexual offenses. His name is Kevin Spacey. Yeah, horrible. Horrible that Kevin Spacey would get himself involved in that sort of that bullshit. And there were some other movies that I remember Kevin Spacey in. Not all of them, but I also remember when Kevin Spacey made a cameo appearance in the third Austin Powers movie called Goldmember. He made a cameo appearance. He portrayed Dr. Evil in that cameo appearance in Goldmember. Other stars that made cameo appearances were Steven Spielberg, Ozzy Osbourne, Quincy Jones, I think. Was it Quincy? No? But one of his songs, or whatever. I don't know. Was it Quincy Jones? Let me see. But yeah. Oh, who was in that movie too? Gwyneth Paltrow. And Tom Cruise. And Danny DeVito. All those stars made a cameo appearance in the third Goldmember movie. But back to Disney. 3 years after the movie Finding Nemo, there was Cars, with voice actor Owen Wilson, who did the voice of Lightning McQueen. I remember him as Jed the Cowboy in Night at the Museum. And he played Hansel in the Zoolander movie. And then a year after Cars, there was 2007 movie, Ratatouille. And a year after Ratatouille came WALL-E from 2008. And a year after WALL-E came 2009 movie, Up, with that old guy who's in a house filled with a bunch of balloons that take him to South America. Another bright, colorful, a lot of bright colors in that movie. Sad, but some feel-good moments in there too. It's kind of in the mix. And what else is there to talk about? Oh, I was watching a documentary about the production behind Toy Story. It turned out that in the original storyboard, Woody's character was far too unlikable to be a production. He was way too big of an asshole that the producers at Pixar literally had to scrap the whole thing and start all the way over from scratch, because there were producers at Pixar that showed them the original storyboard for that one scene. There was a scene in it where the toys were all betting on which toy that Andy would take to go to Pizza Planet. Either it was going to be Woody or Buzz. All the toys were betting that Buzz Lightyear was going to be the toy that Andy would take to Pizza Planet, and definitely not Woody. And there was a scene where they were shaking hands, Woody tosses Buzz Lightyear out the window, and you see how much of an asshole Woody was. That was how bad of the storyboard it was for the pre-production that came into making Toy Story. So yeah, even with a great Disney Pixar film like Toy Story, it goes to show that even a great movie like that has definitely a great bit of history when it comes to production. And because CGI was relatively new, around the mid-80s to the 90s, I even remember a part where one of the producers behind Pixar was talking about how they had to make clay models of Woody and Buzz, and then they would take their pencil and draw like individual verts on that writing utensil, draw the verts onto the clay model, and they would use like a 3D scanning projection wand. They would scan like the verts of the clay model, and then it would automatically be projected right onto the desktop. It was kind of a tricky process. I think that was how they did it. And there was another scene that I remember in that documentary when they were talking about how Toy Story was made. They were talking about how they were trying to get the concept animation of how those little army guys moved. You know, those little army guys with feet, with boards for feet. They look like that they had their feet taped to their boards. Well, to do that, the animators, what they did was that they filmed themselves with boards taped to their feet, and then they spent minutes out of their day filming themselves, walking across the floor with their feet taped to the boards. It's kind of unusual, but it also goes to show you guys that producers really have to use their imagination when it comes to getting the concept of how the animation or movement of a character should work out. And now that I mentioned that, I'm going to be looking about how many people have seen my stream so far. Oh, AC Walker mentioned Saving Private Ryan. Yeah, that's another movie with Tom Hanks, right? Oh, very observant, AC. I might have to check that one out. I really don't know. I've definitely not seen Forrest Gump, but I do remember that Forrest Gump is probably like one of Tom Hanks' most iconic roles in the history of cinema. Like, there's no way that you can watch Tom Hanks and then not think of Forrest Gump. And what else do I talk about here? How long has the stream been? 26 minutes long. Okay. Well, I really don't know what else to talk about. I was kind of geeking out on Pixar, talking about some of the productions that came with Pixar, some of the side gags, some of the little production things, anything relating to Pixar. That's what I did for this part after when I was done talking about Finding Nemo. But other than that, I think that pretty much covers everything for this stream. Thanks to all of you guys for watching this. If you guys like this live stream, drop a like, share, comment, subscribe for more videos, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care, and yeah, bye-bye.